What's up, Iberia Nation? Welcome to episode 1 of The Rundown with your girl, Brandi Iberia, where culture meets conversation with a sprinkle of faith. Now listen, we're not easing into nothing today. Let's get straight into it. First up, we got to talk about Druski because this time the conversation feels a little different. So if you haven't seen it, Druski dropped a skit called How Conservative Women in America Act. And in the video, he's in full character, y'all. I'm serious. I'm talking about blonde wig, blue contacts, full makeup. It's giving white girls on the remix. He's clearly parodying, though, what many people believe is Erica Kirk, and that's where it gets a little sticky. And the video, of course, has gone crazy viral. We're talking tens of millions of views almost instantly. But here's where it's gotten real, because a lot of people weren't laughing. They're like, this is too far. Why mock a grieving woman? Because, of course, we're talking about Erica Kirk, who is the widow of Charlie Kirk, and that's where it gets a little sticky, especially when we're thinking about America, right? And when we think about our current administration and the challenges that minorities and disadvantaged people are continually facing, when you see someone being made fun of that seems untouchable, for some people, they with it. And I'm not necessarily with that because humans are still human and context does matter. And then also another perspective is that you got folks saying that this is what comedy does. It exaggerates, it satires, it pushes buttons. And now we're back in the same space again. Where is the line? And does Druski even believe in a line? Absolutely not. But you know what? I think that's the interesting thing about Druski. Nobody's off limits. It makes me think about Family Guy because with that particular show, they went for Christians, for Buddhists, for Black people, for white people. It does not matter. And Druski has definitely the same vibe. But at the same time, the question is, at what cost? But that's how he built his brand. And it's all about going there. And he absolutely goes there. I will say this, though. There is a difference between being bold and being careless. And I think that's the tension that people are feeling right now. What are you thinking and what are you feeling about Druski's latest prank? Let me know in the comments, wherever you guys are listening. Now let's shift it up a little bit because this next one had the internet talking for a whole different reason. We're talking about Julez Smith and Tommie Lee. Now, this is where I get old, okay? This is where my age comes out because I don't know who these people are. I did not know them until they told me who their mama was, okay? That's when you know that you're getting up in age, and that's all right. I'm all right with it. But we're talking about Julez, talking about Solange's son, and I'm like, oh, now I know who the boy is. But Julez and Tommie Lee, and y'all gonna have to let me know who Tommie Lee is. I don't know a lot about her, but I do know that she's dating a younger man. So Julez is 21 years old and Tommie Lee is 41 years old. And of course, the internet is chattering about them being linked. And immediately the conversation is about the age difference. And woo, child, people got opinions. They got opinions. But here's where I want to take it a step further. Because we don't always respond to age gaps the same way. Sometimes it's normalized. Sometimes it's judged. Sometimes it depends on who it is. Because if you think about like a Harrison Ford and Ally McBeal, I think he was in his 60s and she was significantly younger. And, when it's a older man and a younger woman, it's looked at a certain way, and then vice versa. Sometimes it's praised when it's a younger man and an older woman, and they call her a cougar. And, for the men, they are rooting him on, saying, go ahead, get it, son. Okay. But I think, I don't know if it's because we are just saturated with so much information all the time. We all have these mobile devices, like instant video cameras in our hands at any moment. So we're seeing things that we wouldn't normally see. But they were recently out in the club and Tommie Lee is straddling Julez. I mean, very publicly, very openly. That is her man, okay? That is her man. That is her young man, okay? Not the YN. We'll call him a YM, okay? That is exactly exactly what's happening with them, they together for real. They go together real bad. But the question is it the age or is it the dynamic? Is it how they're carrying themselves? Would it matter if it was a different kind of couple? I don't know. Those conversations, they go way deeper than just celebrity gossip, but we don't have time for that today. Okay. Let me bring it home a little bit because I had the chance to be in the building for the New Edition Legacy Tour right here in Milwaukee. And baby, let me tell you, this was not just a concert. This was a full R&B experience. You had Bobby Brown, Belle Biv DeVoe, Tony Braxton, what's his name? Lord Jesus, I can't think. Ralph Tresvant and Johnny Gill came on out and gave us a little my, okay? And of course, Boyz II Men. And what stood out to me the most, each of them brought something different. Tony gave elegance and control. Boyz II Men gave vocals, like undeniable vocals, okay? And Bobby gave Bobby, okay? It was at one point where he came out, he barely lifted his leg, and he got in the microphone. He said, "If you want to see me dance, Google me." And I felt away because I paid my good money for my seat to see you dance, Bobby, okay? But then later on in the show, it got real. Y'all, he got emotional. He actually broke down right on stage. I didn't realize it, but he was grieving his brother. I didn't realize his brother had died. And Tony also had a grieving moment while she was on stage too. But you could feel it. You could feel the shift. You could feel the emotion. You also could feel the love in the community around him. And it reminded me of this. These aren't just performers. These are real people showing up in real time. And that's why, when I heard later on other headlines about Toni Braxton ending her show early in Minneapolis, I paused. Whatever the cause, whatever the reason, I was like, God, sis deserves some grace. This, however, did make me think about something bigger because outside of health concerns, as being the reason why people stop, because Money Long, who is significantly younger, has had to pause a lot of her tour and well, she made it through she ended early on the Monica and Brandi tour, but a lot of her upcoming things that she had going on, she had to pause because of a lupus flare up. And we know Toni Braxton deals with lupus and also some things going on with her heart. So health, it doesn't really matter what age, but it's interesting without people knowing the full story, they do have stuff to say about the age of these performers. They're saying, okay, is it time to stop? Are they washed up? How long is too long for an artist to perform? And I feel a way about that. My former boss actually did a commentary similar, posing those questions similarly, because honestly, are we really being fair? Because last time I checked, Mick Jagger is still performing, the Rolling Stones are still touring, and they're celebrated for it. So why is it when it comes to Black artists, we start putting expiration dates on excellence? And honestly, watching Boyz II Men, that's what really did it for me, because when they sang, listen, y'all, it didn't feel like nostalgia. It felt like this is the standard. Okay, these folks are not washed up. This is legacy walking. And it got me thinking, more about that word legacy and what it really does take to sustain that for 40 years. So I'm excited about this next conversation. I had a chance to sit down with John Morrison to talk about the story behind 40 years of Boyz II Men, celebrating 40 years of music and so much more. So y'all keep it locked. Let's get into it. He's a Philly native, a deep music head, writer, producer, DJ, and one of the sharpest music journalists out here right now. You've seen his work with NPR, The Wire, Bandcamp Daily, and he's got deep roots in documenting hip hop and R&B culture, especially when it comes to the legends from his hometown. Now he's blessing us with his brand new book, Boyz II Men 40th Anniversary Celebration, a full love letter to one of the most iconic R&B R&B groups of all time. From Motown Philly to End of the Road, Boyz II Men gave us the soundtrack to our lives. And John is here to talk about their legacy, the stories behind the music, and why these brothers still matter after 40 years in the game. John, thanks so much for being on with me today.
Brandi, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's start at the beginning. What was it about Boyz II Men's story that made you want to write a full celebration book? Was there a personal connection or a moment that sparked it?
Yeah, so I've been writing about Philly music history for a long time. I started 25 years ago as a junior in high school. So I've been writing about Philly's music scene and just trying to connect the dots between Philly music culture, these different points in Philly music culture for a long time. That's been my work. So with Boyz II Men, if you think about it, they're really one of the biggest, probably the biggest group that's ever come out of, Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So their story is significant. Their music looms over Philadelphia's music history.
Sure.
So there was no way that I could continue on in my work and at some point not engage with Boyz II Men, their music, their legacy, the influences that they had, and also the influences that they exerted over music. It was a big story, but it was something that I knew at some point I was going to have to tackle.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely coming down the pike. So the book, as you said, it covers, well, you've been covering the Philly scene for a while, but the book itself covers a huge span, 4 decades with Boyz II Men. What surprised you the most in researching their journey from high school talent shows to sold-out global tours?
So it's just a lot of things came up. I knew a bit about Boyz II Men before I started researching this book, but there's so many things that I uncovered in the research or, with talking to people, interviewing people. So, I knew that Boyz II Men in 1995 opened their own recording studio right outside of Philly. I knew that was a thing.
Yeah.
But what I didn't know was that the building where they built the studio actually used to be a Civil War munitions factory.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, they used to build weapons for the Civil War in that old building.
Wow.
I also didn't know that, many, many, many years later when Boyz II Men took the building over, a very young, pre-fame Britney Spears recorded an entire album at Boyz II Men's studio.
Wow.
An unreleased album. She actually worked on it with Vivian Green, the legendary Philly soul singer, was writing songs for young Britney Spears at that time, and they were recording those records at Boyz II Men's studio. So, it was just the entire process of writing this book and researching it has been a process of discovery, right? Writing about things that I knew about Philly music history and the broader history of pop culture, but then finding all of these little nuggets and gems along the way. That's really been the process.
Amazing. Amazing. And I know also you've interviewed some heavy hitters in the industry like Joe the Butcher. What insights did they share about working with the group that fans may not know?
The subjects really gave me a lot in this book. Joe the Butcher.
Yeah.
He's a figure who pops up in a lot of early Philly hip-hop history in the 80s and in the 90s. So he's somebody who, was on my list of people that I needed to talk to. But one thing that came up a lot in these interviews with folks who had directly worked with Boyz II Men was that they were professionals, even at a young age.
Wow.
These guys are young in their early 20s, making some of the biggest records ever. And the musicians and engineers that I talked to said that these guys were, class acts. They were professional and that they were focused, young people who had a lot of talent and a lot of creativity and, had kind of blown the doors open in the music business and made these big hits. But they were focused. They were focused on the music. So that was something that kept coming up as I did these interviews.
Love it. Love it. And you also talk about fan culture and legacy in the book. What do you think keeps fans so connected to Boyz II Men after all these years?
I think that Boyz II Men are significant, with who they are and the music that they've made and these songs that they've created. I think that fans have, gotten married to these songs, had their first kisses to these songs. Like it's music that will follow you throughout different highlights of your life. But I think that part of what keeps people coming back to this music is that it comes from somewhere, right? So Boyz II Men were innovative, but they also stood on the shoulders of all of the doo-wop groups that came before them.
Yeah.
The Motown vocal groups, 60s R&B, 70s Philly soul, Gamble and Huff. So the music that they made was unique and innovative for its time, but it was also rich because it was rich with history. You can feel that when you listen to it. When you hear, the harmonies, you can hear jazz in the harmonies. When they when Boyz II Men met in high school, they were vocal majors and they were studying Western classical music and learning to sing that out of that tradition. So when you listen to a song, you're hearing that song in that moment when they recorded it, but you're also hearing all of this history. That's something that you can hold on to and keep coming back to.
Absolutely. I mean, immediately when you started to talk about the foundations and doo-wop, I'm thinking the doo-doo-da-da, Like, I'm in high school. Actually, I might have been younger than that. And I'm just bebop, doo-wop, and not even realizing the foundation and the culture and the connection that kind of flowed through that. And you said it. It's been the soundtrack for our lives. And nostalgia is real. Every time I hear a Boyz II Men song, it takes me back to somewhere in my life. I mean, literally just about every song that they've come out with. So I know that there are many other folks that are like me, which is why this book is absolutely going to touch the masses. So I'm super excited to learn what I didn't know and to even confirm things that I did know. So I'm super excited about this. Yep. And I did just do wop, bop, bop live on this. It's all good.
It sounded good, too.
Okay, thank you. And this is what Boyz II Men does to us, okay? So there's a stereotype that boy bands come and go. But, of course, Boyz II Men, they're still standing. What's the secret sauce for longevity in such a tough industry?
I think, I'm not a singer. Like, I sing a little bit around the house. So, I'm not in the industry in that respect. Yeah. But I think that any artist that has longevity, if you look at the moves that they made, it's really about cultivating a connection with the artist or with the artist and audience.
The fans.
So I've interviewed a lot of folks who were, just fans of Boyz II Men. Maybe they're, in their professional lives, they're songwriters or engineers or writers. But I wanted to talk with them for this book about them as fans. And, a few folks have told me that, they've gone to Boyz II Men concerts and had, personal, moments with them. Maybe it's like, where they're giving out like the roses at the end of the show. That kind of stuff sticks with people. And, being a musician who, can, if you're blessed as a musician to find an audience, because it's difficult, finding an audience and then cultivating a relationship with that audience, that's something that's important. And I think that that's something that will keep a musician around longer than, the other way, being egotistical and all that other stuff.
For sure. So quick look ahead. 2025 marks their big anniversary tour and album plans. Any sneak peeks or details you can share from what they've got in store?
I don't have any inside knowledge, but I would hope to hear some new music from them soon. I'm just curious to see what they would do. The landscape has changed so much. The sound of music in general has changed so much. I'm curious to see what they would do right now and what the music would sound like. I know they've been, especially Sean, has been on like social media, you know, really leaning into playing guitar and singing, you know, music that maybe, you know, we don't know Boyz II Men for, you know, traditionally. I'm curious to see what they would do and what kind of curveballs they would throw at us as music fans and appreciators.
Yeah, me too. I'd be interested to see also if they do some collaborative work with some new artists too. I kind of always like to see that intergenerational crossover. So yeah, we are waiting Boyz II Men new music or whatever you give us. We definitely are ready for it. I've been talking to the extraordinary John Morrison about his new book, Boyz II Men 40th Anniversary Celebration. John, any parting words for our listeners? Where can they get the book? Anything else you want us to know?
So the book is a big, beautiful hardcover book, a lot of gorgeous pictures, but it also, you know, has some real substantial and rich history in it. So, you know, when you buy it, you'll absolutely enjoy it. And you can find it anywhere. If you type in John Morrison, Boyz II Men, or Boyz II Men 40th Anniversary Celebration, you can find it anywhere. Amazon, Walmart even has it. A bunch of independent booksellers around the country are carrying it. You know, anywhere you find books, you can find this one.
I love it. Well, thank you again, John, for coming on and just sharing with us. We're looking forward to obviously this project and any other new project that you have coming up. So definitely stay connected. We appreciate you here.
Yeah, Brandi, thank you so much.
Thank y'all for listening. Before we go, let me say this. We live in a time where everything is immediate, instant reactions, instant opinions, but not always thoughtful ones. And if I'm being honest, a lot of what we're missing right now is grace. Because whether it's comedy that pushes boundaries, relationships that make people uncomfortable, or people carrying real life while still showing up, we're so quick to judge, but not as quick to extend the same grace that we pray for. And the truth is, God gives us grace daily, unconditional, unearned, consistent. So maybe the assignment isn't to have an opinion about everything. Maybe it's to move with a little more compassion, to pause before we criticize, to understand before we assume, because at the end of the day, we're all navigating something, and grace is still the standard. All right, y'all, that's the rundown. I'm Brandi Iberia, and I'll see you next time.